Hey everyone, welcome to Future Ready Today. It is Wednesday, November 19th, 2025. And if this is your first time tuning in, this is the only podcast out there that really looks at some of the signals and trends shaping the future of work. So every day I go through all the top news stories out there and I try to find the most important and crucial stories that you need to be paying attention to that are shaping the future of work. And the idea is to pull out the most important things you need to know today to prepare for the future. And if this is, again, your first time tuning in, welcome. My name is Jacob. I am your host. I am a professionally trained futurist, author, and speaker. And this episode in particular, I'm also going to be putting up on YouTube. So all the previous episodes were audio only, but we're going to experiment a little bit. We're going to try to put some of these up on YouTube as well and see how they do. Before we jump into the stories today, I have quite a few interesting ones to get to. I want to mention two things. Of course, the first is the CHRO group that I have called Future of Work Leaders. So if you are a CHRO, chances are your responsibility is going to move from beyond traditional HR to focus on the future of work and employee experience, which means that you need to connect with peers just like you who are also making that same shift. We have dozens of CHROs in there from companies like PwC, Saks Global, Norfolk Southern, and many, many others. So check it out, futureofworkleaders.com. We actually have a meeting right after I record this. We're going to be talking about business acumen for CHROs and why CHROs need to move from thinking of themselves as just business leaders to being more like more from people leaders to strategic business leaders. Other thing I want to mention, my brand new book, The 8 Laws of Employee Experience, available for pre-order. Thank you to everybody who's been pre-ordering copies. I really appreciate that. You can learn more about the book by going to the number 8, exlaws.com. That's 8exlaws.com. And it takes a futurist look at employee experience and takes, I think, a pretty good perspective on where things are going over the next 5 to 10 years. Okay, let's get into the top stories of today. There are 6 of them today. The first one is from the Wall Street Journal, and I love the title of this one. It says, "Layoff tactics keep changing, and the blunders keep coming." Blunders, those of you who listen to the podcast know I'm a big fan of chess. I play a lot of chess, so whenever I hear chess terms and chess lingo in there, I love it. Okay, so let me give you a summary, then we'll jump into the futurist lens for each story. Amazon's latest 14,000 layoffs were delivered through a text-email combo. Employees received a text directing them to check their inbox, where they found an automated note telling them their role was eliminated. Target asked employees to stay at home the entire week of layoffs, only for a Zoom glitch to prevent some workers from hearing parts of their termination call. Southwest Airlines, they locked corporate offices and conducted layoffs via listen-only video. Condé Nast layoffs escalated into protests, firings, and even the New York Attorney General showing up outside headquarters. Companies say these tactics improve efficiency, but Gartner research shows mishandled offboarding increases brand damage, turnover among remaining employees, and rehiring costs, sometimes adding 30 to 200% of salary per replacement. So the futurist lens here. I think this trend is, this shift is showing a trend towards efficiency at the expense of dignity. And companies are getting very obsessed with efficiency, with productivity. How do we streamline? How do we make things faster? How do we make things quicker? Right? And we need to remember that we can't do that at the expense of dignity, at the expense of being human. And I've shared this story once or twice before on this podcast, but my wife used to work for a Fortune 100 company, one of the big tech companies out there in the Bay Area. And she was laid off from her job probably, 8 to 10 years ago now. And as she was getting laid off, the HR manager was running a meeting on Zoom, and she had her headset on while she was telling my wife, like, "You're out of here." And so even then, 8 to 10 years ago, this company was trying to be so productive and so efficient that they didn't care about the humanity, the dignity aspect of it. And it made such an impression on my wife that she shares this story in a lot of her keynotes. And she has a terrible brand reputation and perception of the company now, where to the point where when the stock goes down, she's like, "Woohoo, yeah, I hate that company, let the stock go down." And we all kind of cheer for the company to tank. because it was such a terrible experience for her. And I think we need to remember that, in the realm of employee experience, there are certain moments that matter. Onboarding is a crucial moment that matters, and being let go is also an important moment that matters. And if you create a bad experience when people leave your company, you're never going to have a chance of them ever coming back. And sometimes you do have to let go of talented people because, whatever issues might be arising. You always want to potentially keep a door open unless these people have done something tremendously bad or evil to the company. So treating people with dignity, treating people as human beings, I think is important, whether you're letting people go or whether you're hiring people. And I think leaders specifically who are able to treat layoffs as a human experience instead of a logistical process purely are gonna see much more benefits. You don't want to pay a long-term trust tax, so to speak. So the companies that handle layoffs with empathy, transparency, humanness, I think will do a better job of attracting and retaining talent. You can still embed efficiencies in there because obviously you do need to be efficient when you're doing this, but you don't need to sacrifice humanity. Story number 2, Sundar Pichai warns the AI boom has elements of irrationality. This is the CEO of Google. Alphabet CEO Sundar Pichai told the BBC that today's AI boom has elements of irrationality, comparing it directly to the dot-com bubble. Alphabet's valuation has doubled to $3.5 trillion in 7 months. NVIDIA hit a $5 trillion valuation, and there's a $1.4 trillion web of OpenAI-related deal-making, raising concerns about froth. Pichai warned no company, including Google, is immune if the bubble bursts. He also highlighted AI's energy intensity. AI workloads accounted for 1.5% of global electricity consumption last year, and this is projected to double by 2027. So lots of interesting things happening. NVIDIA is supposed to be reporting their earnings today. Let me just quickly pull up the stock here. So NVIDIA is up 2% today. So we'll see, I think, after hours what the reporting is going to look like. But, looking at the stock chart here, just to give you some context on where this company came from. So in 2022, towards the end of 22, this company, and I can even go to the beginning of 2023. Let's do that. So the very beginning of 2023, in January, the company was trading at $19.54 a share. $19.54 a share. Today, it's trading at $185.26. And if the earnings call today goes well, it'll bump up even higher. I think the high for NVIDIA was over $200. So imagine in 2 years, going from, again, being in the $14, $15 range to crossing $200. It's pretty wild. And so a lot of people think there is a potential bubble. These companies are investing in each other. So Meta invests in OpenAI, in Oracle to OpenAI, NVIDIA, right? So they're all kind of recirculating money. And so there's a lot of skepticism around if we are in a bubble or not. So for me, when I look at this, I think the futurist lens is that Pichai is signaling the transition from rational investment to speculative excess. And I think a lot of investors out there are taking their profits from these tech companies, which have surged. Leaders now have to prepare for structural transformation from hype-driven exuberance. As I've said several times on this podcast, I think the next 1 to 2 years is going to see massive structural change inside of organizations before AI is really able to make the impact that so many people think it's going to make. So the next bottleneck for AI is not algorithms, it will be energy. So these companies are building massive data centers, massive energy facilities. They're talking about nuclear, coal, all sorts of stuff next to their locations. So we'll see a lot of investments in that space. The workforce implications, I think, are also clear. AI won't eliminate jobs, but it will eliminate the jobs where people fail to adopt it. The differentiator is not just technical skills alone. It will be leaders capable of pairing AI fluency with human judgment. Story number 3, and I think this is a rather interesting one. US versus Europe. The return to office divide widens. This is a story from CRE Daily. North America's 15 most valuable banks now average 4.2 days in office per week, with 11 of the most 15 valuable banks in the US requiring 4 or more days. JP Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon continues to mandate a full 5 days in the office. In Europe, however, only 7 of the top 15 banks require 4 days, and none require 5. European institutions like BBVA, Intesa Sanpaolo treat hybrid work as a competitive advantage. So just looking at performance, JP Morgan posted roughly $54 billion in profit last year, with Q4 net income rising nearly 50%. European banks, while trading at lower valuations, about 8.6 times 2027 earnings, are strengthening through capital discipline. And so it remains to be seen what will happen. Same industry, but very different models and therefore different approaches to work. As I tell companies all the time, do what makes sense for you. In Europe, it seems like a lot of these banks are tapping into hybrid as a competitive advantage. In the United States, banks like Jamie Dimon's, JP Morgan Chase are tapping into return to office as discipline, as focusing more on leadership in the office, on culture. So it remains to be seen which will pay off. Honestly, I think both are going to do fine. If you want to work for a company where there's more of a hybrid approach, you can work for one of those types of banks. If you want to work for a company where there's more potential upside for your career, leadership, maybe more pay, in some cases, be willing to come to the office. So I think there's a place for both types of companies. I'm not a big fan of a one-size-fits-all approach. So the futurist lens here is that U.S. banks seem to be a little bit more rigid, European banks a little bit more flexible. And as I said, each bank is doing what makes sense for its strategy, for its culture, for its profile, for its workforce, for its regulatory environment. I think the JP Morgan 5-day model aligns with high coordination, high intensity, massive change, massive impact, massive speed. Standard Chartered hybrid model aligns more with distributed teams competing for talent. So again, different approaches, different companies. Story number 4. This one was actually, I was reading this story earlier, and it's pretty shocking. The alarming collapse of foundational math skills, published by The Atlantic. Now, I wouldn't be surprised if, and actually there have been studies done showing the same thing for reading too, but let me just read this story here. UC San Diego. So I'm in California. I went to the University of California, Santa Cruz. UC San Diego now admits more than 900 freshmen who cannot meet middle school math standards. And I think one of the examples that I heard in a podcast this morning as far as what one of the math problems was, it said something along the lines of 6 plus 3 is equivalent to 5 plus what? Something along those lines. 6 plus 3, 9, 5 plus 4, 9. And so, people can fact check me. I think the numbers were just slightly different, but that's the type of problem that these students were struggling with. So again, 900 freshmen who cannot meet middle school math standards, up from 30 students 5 years ago. Many struggle with basic algebra or dividing fractions. Across the UC system, the number of students unprepared for pre-calculus has doubled or tripled. Nationally, the average 8th grader is now a full school year behind 2013 levels. The causes: pandemic, learning loss, relaxed grading standards, smartphone-driven attention decline, removal of standardized tests, and widespread no-zero policies that distort academic signals. Now, not to bash my school, the University of California, Santa Cruz, but I remember there was one semester, it was either 1 year or one semester, where you can actually take a class and opt to not get graded for it. You can just do pass or no pass. So kind of crazy. UC San Diego reports that over a quarter of students in its remedial course earned straight A's in high school math. So straight A's in high school math, yet when they got to college, they couldn't really do much. As Stanford professor Brian Conrad warns, assuming AI will replace foundational skills is a recipe for idiocracy. Lots I want to say on this. So the futurist lens. If we see these types of things, and there are lots of studies out there, there have been commentary on this for reading, for math, for writing, for just kind of basic skills to be in an entry-level job. Now, all the major employers out there are seeing this. They're experiencing this. I've talked to many CHROs who kind of see and experience this as well. And you have to imagine, if you're running a large company and you're thinking of hiring college grads, and you hear and you see stuff like this, are you more tempted to hire a college grad, or are you going to turn to AI and be like, well, if the majority of them can't do math and they can't read at a functional middle or high school reading level, why not just bring in the bots? So there's a lot that can be said about this. Number one, parents, where are you? Where are you, parents? I'm very involved with my 5-year-old and my 9-year-old with reading, with math, with everything that they do. If I saw that my child was struggling with reading or doing basic math, I'm all over it. When my daughter does her math homework, if she makes a mistake, she does it again. I don't let her turn in homework that's incorrect. I mean, we go over stuff, we talk about stuff. I'm very, very involved to make sure that my kids are at a level that they need to be at. So parents, where are you? Educational institutions, where are you? What happened to the standardized tests? What happened to standards of any kind? Or what happened to giving people an F? I remember in high school, I got really bad grades in high school. My GPA was like a 2.79. I struggled with AP calculus. I struggled with math. I struggled with reading. I hated all these things. And my parents stepped in. I got in all sorts of trouble. And when I went to the University of California, Santa Cruz, I really doubled down. I worked hard. I did calculus. I did econometrics. I did statistics. And, I got very good grades. I graduated with honors there. But I had to work a lot to be able to get those grades. So parents need to step up. Educational institutions need to step up. Companies, where are you? Where are you talking about standards? You are not parents for the new employees who are coming into your company. You don't need to create any form of entitlement. You don't need to view people as victims. Create accountability, standards, responsibility. Work is about mutual beneficial value exchange. If you show up to the company, here's what we expect from you, and here's what we commit to be able to delivering for you as your employer. So we need to get back to standards, to accountability, to responsibility on all levels. Students, where are you? I mean, if you want to have a job working at an organization like an Alphabet, like an IBM or a Pepsi, you know if you're struggling or not. You know if your teacher is giving you BS grades or not. So if you're serious about being successful in entering the workforce and having a job, then guess what? This is going to be something very, very important for you to be focusing on. So, I see stories like this, and this is, it's pretty wild. Weak math also is not just about numbers. It's about eroding problem-solving skills, logical reasoning, the ability to validate, to challenge AI outputs. I argue with AI all the time about stupid responses it gives me, and I have to fight back with it and argue with it all the time to get to something that I want that is usable. If you don't have these skills, you're not going to be able to do that. You're going to be copying and pasting what something like ChatGPT gives you. So organizations, you too, you're going to have to build a rather powerful learning ecosystem because unfortunately, educational institutions out there are not able to do what they are supposed to do. One of the reasons why I think in the coming years, colleges are going to see a massive decline in enrollment as we really start to question the value of why go to these places and spend hundreds of thousands of dollars if by the time we graduate, the skills are outdated, and in a lot of cases, we don't even have what we need to be able to enter the workforce. So, leaders out there, employees out there, universities out there, parents out there, if you assume that AI is going to handle it for you, I think you're going to be in for a very rude awakening. Story number 5, AI is now writing performance reviews. So this was a Bloomberg story. Companies like Walmart and GE are using AI to draft performance reviews, often with managers providing only minor edits. Employers say it reduces bias and increases consistency. Employees say the results feel generic, inaccurate, and disconnected from real contributions. AI has already misattributed achievements or misunderstood job responsibilities in some cases. Legal experts warn this could increase exposure in disputes involving pay decisions, promotions, or termination because inaccuracies become documented fact. Underneath this trend is a capability gap. Many managers were never trained to evaluate performance well, and AI is filling the void. Futurist lens on this. AI in performance reviews isn't necessarily the problem. I think managerial well, let me rephrase that. AI in performance reviews, I think AI should be used for the data side of things. So AI can get information from employees as far as their performance, summarize feedback from leaders, from peers, and kind of consolidate that into something that you can take a look at, almost like when a doctor looks at your chart before they have a conversation with you. They're looking at your numbers, they're looking at what happened in the previous visit, and they kind of have a summary of what they need to know before they meet with you. So I think AI is really good at that. AI can summarize how you've been doing, engagement scores, performance. It can take all the data and information, structured and unstructured, put it into some sort of a dashboard that you as a leader can use for your performance review. However, the actual review itself should not be written by AI. That should be a human process. For 20 years, companies have underinvested in leadership fundamentals, things like giving feedback, having difficult conversations, writing evaluations, assessing talent. And now we're saying, well, great, we don't need to do that stuff. We can get the bot to do it. And in my book, The 8 Laws of Employee Experience, I have 5 potential futures that are going to emerge. And one of these futures is called the algorithmic enterprise. And the algorithmic enterprise is an organization that relies so heavily on AI that AI basically drives the organization. Now, on the surface, it seems good, right? On the surface, this seems like everyone's getting a little bit more productive. Emails are a little bit more polished. The performance reviews seem to be a little bit more structured. And you're like, wow, things are, moving along here. But then the long-term effect of that is actually disastrous, because when you take a step back, you realize that human beings inside that kind of an organization are now the physical manifestation of chatbots. You've taken out any element of being human inside the company. And as a result, engagement will eventually suffer, high performers will leave, and the company will suffer and struggle. You cannot create an organization where you are replacing humans or where you're becoming the physical manifestation of a bot. That doesn't make any sense. You still need to be human at work, giving feedback, having difficult conversations. Like, if we want to use AI to replace some of the mundane aspects of work, that's totally fine. But this is not one of those areas. Having one-on-one conversations and performance reviews are one of the most important elements of being a good leader, a good manager inside your company. You can't just throw that out and give it to a bot. Otherwise, honestly, why even be a leader at the company? If you can have a conversation with your people and give them feedback and give them suggestions and recommendations and connect with them on a human level, get the hell out of there. Why are you there? Let the bot do your job. So for me, I think a lot of companies are using AI as a shortcut instead of as an amplifier. The future advantage will go to companies that pair AI with stronger leadership, not weaker leadership. Don't use AI to make you a weaker leader. Use AI to make you a better leader. If leaders outsource judgment to algorithms and create this algorithmic enterprise that I'm talking about, they weaken fairness, trust, coaching, accountability, and the core pillars of a high-performing culture, which means you will not have a high-performing culture. Story number 6, last one of the day. This was a story from Fortune. Gen Z's double major boom, a shield or a distraction. So I double majored in economics and psychology, but let me give you this story here. Double majoring has exploded, up 591% at Drexel, 334% at Harvard, 169% at UC San Diego. Students are trying to become AI-proof in one of the toughest entry-level job markets in a decade. Research from the National Bureau of Economic Research shows double majors experience a 56% reduced impact from income shocks, but earnings advantages are modest, about 2 to 3%. Cambridge research finds the biggest protection doesn't come from pairing similar majors like computer science and data science, but from mixing STEM with liberal arts. Although leaders like Steve Jobs praise hybrid education, employers increasingly care less about credentials and more about evidence of applied skill. The futurist lens here. Double majoring is going to do absolutely nothing to future-proof you in the next, in the future of work. I think this is where Gen Z is right and wrong at the same time. Yes, diversifying your skill set matters, But having multiple majors is far less powerful than what I think is going to be the most important aspect for people graduating college and looking to get jobs. Or even if you're in career transition, maybe you're not even graduating college, maybe you're 30, 40 years old looking for your next role. Most important thing for you is going to be show and tell. Do you remember in elementary school, and maybe it's just because I have a 5-year-old son who does this frequently and a 9-year-old daughter who's doing this frequently, where you have to build something and to create something, and then you have to show up in front of your class and you have to present it and talk about it. So the other day, my 9-year-old had to make a roller coaster, which a lot of fun. Thank you, teachers, for making me do that with my daughter. So she had to make a roller coaster. And we made it out of these little like Technic Lego pieces. I think they're called Technic. It had to be a theme, so we hung like tennis balls on it because my daughter loves tennis. And she had to show up in front of her class, and she had to talk about where is their inertia building, how does this roller coaster work, and she had to demonstrate that she built something, and she had to explain it. This is going to be the most important thing for you to do. Companies are starting to care about resumes less and less and less. If you have a degree in computer science, great. What did you do with it? Have you built a website? Have you created something that I can see and play around with and demo? Now, you might be thinking, well, it's so hard to do that now. It's not. You have AI tools. You have tools like Cursor and Replit, where basically you can vibe code, meaning you can go in there, type in something in normal human English and have it create something for you. Like you can go in there and say, I would like to create a chess app. And I want this chess app to give me 5 unique puzzles every day from world championship games. And I want it to give me a score, blah, 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 blah. And literally in a couple minutes, it'll build for you a demo of what that looks like. So regardless of what you're trying to build, maybe it's a 3D model of a cityscape, or you want to become an industrial or a civil engineer. Maybe it's some sort of a model that you need developed in 3D with AI. Maybe it's a site. Maybe it's a piece of programming language. Can't even speak. Maybe it's an application. Maybe it's a marketing analysis that you've done for a marketing role. Whatever it is, you have the ability now to show and tell, not just to tell. So having a great resume, it's now table stakes. You need to demonstrate how is this resume coming to life? How are the skills that you've learned coming to life? And I think this is going to be a very important thing. Think about it as building a portfolio. Portfolio projects, prototypes, go on GitHub, micro-credentials, case studies. All of these things are going to be far more important than just having a nice resume where you have a double major. Now, I think double majoring, it's one of many strategies that you can use, but it's not necessarily a differentiator anymore. I double majored in economics and psychology. I graduated with honors from a UC. You know what I was doing my first job out of college? Data entry and cold calling presentations and driving 3 hours every day back and forth from work. And then finally, I quit that job when the CEO made me go get him a cup of coffee. And again, that's a double major in psychology and economics. Today's market is even harder than it was, 16, 17, 18 years ago. And that's what I was doing. I had a hell of a time finding a job back then. Today, the market is even harder. So double major, it might help in some aspects of your life. But I think if you can focus on showing and telling, you will have a far greater chance of getting a job. I think that's really what a lot of people are looking for. So those are the top future of work stories of the day. I want to leave you with a quote. I have so many great quotes today that I wanted to leave you with. Let's go with Meg Whitman. If you're waiting for perfect information, you're already too late. So that's it for today's episode. I will see all of you tomorrow. And again, this is going up not just on podcast platforms, but this is the first episode we're going to try to put up on YouTube as well. We'll see how it goes. And I hope you get a chance to pre-order a copy of my new book, The 8 Laws of Employee Experience. Go to the number 8exlaws.com. Again, that's number 8exlaws.com. Have a wonderful rest of the day. See you tomorrow.